Gary called his wife on speakerphone from a crowded bar, laughing with his friends and his mistress, Linda. He thought he was announcing his freedom. He thought he was about to take half the house, half the retirement, and half the design firm Brenda built with her own hands. But what he didn't know was that Brenda was already 3 weeks ahead of him. She had a lawyer, a forensic accountant, a private investigator, hidden cameras, and a protection order waiting. Gary thought he was serving divorce papers. Brenda was about to serve him reality.
My husband called on speaker mid-divorce prep. His buddies were howling. I cut in. "Oh, Linda is laughing? Funny, considering she doesn't know you put her condo deposit on my credit card, which I just cancelled. Hello, everyone. Thrilled to have you here. Before we jump in, grab a warm drink. I'd love to know your viewing time. Drop an M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let us dive in." I was sitting at my design firm, studying a blueprint that just felt wrong. The structure was sound, but the flow? Completely off. It mirrored my life. Solid outside, but crumbling within. Afternoon sun sliced through the blinds, casting jagged shadows across my desk. It was dead quiet, the silence you pay for after 30 years of grinding in the industry. Then, my phone shattered the peace. A video call from Gary. My stomach flipped, it always did. He never video called. Gary was a man of grunts and texts, especially since he quit real estate 2 years ago. I tapped the button, expecting to see him asking about a lost jacket or demanding his favorite craft beer. Instead, a neon-soaked blur and the roar of a sports bar filled the screen. The camera sat against a beer pitcher, angled up at his red face and a spinning ceiling fan. But I heard him fine. She picked up. She actually picked up. Gary sounded drunk, arrogant, and, frankly, repulsive. "Hey, Brenda, you there? Got the guys here. And Linda, my best friend of 20 years. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. I am here, Gary." I did not yell. I just watched. The view shifted. I saw his deadbeat drinking buddies, guys who hadn't held a job in decades. And there, leaning in with a glassy giggle, was Linda. She waved, fluttering her fingers like she was greeting a fan, not the woman whose husband she was currently draped over. "Celebrating, Brenda?" Gary shouted over the jukebox. "Celebrating our freedom. Freedom?" I leaned back in my leather chair. I felt ice settle in my veins. "That is right. I am at the lawyer's office." "Well, we just left." Gary laughed, clinking his glass against Linda's. I told him to draw it up. "Finalizing the divorce, babe. Done with the nagging. Done with you controlling the money. I need a woman who knows how to have fun, not one who treats me like staff." The table roared with laughter. Linda covered her mouth, feigning shock, but her eyes glittered with spite. "Oh, Gary, stop it!" she purred, pressing closer. "I am serious," Gary yelled at my phone like I was a heckler. "I am taking half, Brenda. Half the firm. Half the house. Half the retirement. And I am spending it on a life that doesn't smell like sawdust. Consider this your notice. You are fired from being my wife." The laughter grew uglier. It shattered 25 years of marriage, of me paying his debts, holding his hand through grief, and building a life so he could stand on top of it and spit down. He expected tears. He expected me to crumble. He had no clue who he was dealing with. While he was playing big shot with cheap beer, I had been busy. He didn't know about the forensic accountant I hired 3 weeks ago. He didn't know about the emails currently lighting up my screen. I took a breath. The blueprint on my desk finally made sense. I knew exactly which wall needed to come down. "Gary," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the bar noise like a diamond. "Before you celebrate too hard, and before you sign a single thing." I paused. His smug smile faltered. The laughter died down as the mood shifted. "What?" he sneered. "You going to beg me to stay?" "No," I said. "I just have a question. Thanks for watching. Where are you tuning in from? Tell me below. Let's rewind. To understand why I stayed dry-eyed, you need to see the slow, agonizing death of our marriage. It did not happen overnight. It was death by 1,000 cuts. It started 6 months ago on a Tuesday morning. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and the damp chill of a Chicago autumn. I was at the island, reviewing a kitchen remodel contract. Gary shuffled in around 10, scratching his stomach in worn-out sweatpants. "Morning," I said, keeping it light. "Coffee is ready," he grunted, pouring a mug without looking at me. "Out of creamer," he muttered. I put it on the list, I said. Then I decided to try again. I pulled a small, cream-colored envelope from my bag. Tickets to a jazz show downtown for Friday night. We used to love jazz. Hey, I thought maybe dinner at that Italian spot before the show. Just us. No phones. No talk about the business. Gary stopped stirring. He eyed the envelope like it was a legal subpoena. He walked to the stainless steel fridge where our color-coded calendar hung. My work in blue, bills in green, social plans in red. He grabbed a thick red permanent marker. He uncapped it with his teeth. Then, with a squeak that grated on my nerves, he drew a massive, aggressive X through Friday. "Don't plan anything cute," he said, not even turning around. "I am busy." I sat there, the envelope feeling heavy. "Busy? Gary, you haven't worked in 2 years. Busy with what?" He sponged around, eyes cold. "Stuff, Brenda? I have stuff. I need space to find myself. You are always organizing. It is suffocating. No eye contact. Just the marker scratch and the thud of the fridge door. "I am trying to celebrate us," I said, voice trembling. 25 years, Gary. 25 years of what?" He shot back. "Of you working? Of you being the big boss? You think just because you pay the bills, you own my time? I am not one of your contractors, Brenda. You cannot schedule me." He walked past, grabbing a bagel. "Don't get needy. It is pathetic. If I knew breakfast would be like this, I would have stayed in bed." I watched him leave. The kitchen felt hollow. I looked at the calendar. That red X looked less like a schedule change and more like a target. I came from nothing. My father was a carpenter, a man who smelled of pine and honest sweat. He taught me that if you want something built, you build it yourself. I built my company from a rusty truck and a toolbox. I built this house. I carried Gary when real estate crashed in 2008. I carried him through his depression. I carried him when he decided he was too senior for entry-level sales. I had carried him so long I forgot how to stand straight. That morning, staring at the fridge, something clicked. It wasn't anger yet. It was pure clarity. He didn't want to celebrate because in his mind there was no us. Just me, the bank account, and him the victim of my success. I shredded the tickets. The tearing paper was our anniversary soundtrack. Later, I saw a notification on our joint account, a charge for a florist, $150. I assumed stupidly that maybe he felt bad. Maybe he bought flowers to apologize. I drove home with a spark of hope. I walked in expecting roses on the island. "Nothing. Gary?" I called out. "In the den," he yelled. "Watching football. No flowers. Did you buy anything today?" I asked from the doorway. "Just gas," he said, not looking away. "Why?" "Obsessed with money again?" I went upstairs. Bedroom was empty. I checked the guest room. Nothing. The charge was real. The flowers were real. They just weren't for me. That was the first crack in the foundation. But any builder knows that by the time you see the crack, the structural damage is already done. A week after that disaster, I tried a different approach. Maybe date night pressure was too much. Men can be weird about expectations, or so I told myself. I decided to cook. Gary loved my pot roast, slow cooked for 8 hours. It was comfort food. It was safe. I left the office early, stopped at the butcher, and spent the afternoon in the kitchen. I wanted the house to feel like a sanctuary when he got home. I wasn't just the CEO, I was his wife. I set the table with nice candles, nothing too dramatic. I even opened that Cabernet he loves. 6 o'clock passed, then 7. The pot roast was sitting, perfectly warm, in the oven. By 8, I texted him, no reply. At 8:45, the garage door finally rumbled. Relief hit me, followed immediately by dread. Which version of Mark was coming home? The man I married or the stranger who kept secrets? He walked in, tossed his keys, and didn't even look my way. He ignored the table entirely. "Hey," I said, stepping closer. I made roast. He paused, sniffing the air. For a split second, I saw a flicker of hunger, maybe even nostalgia. Then his face went cold. He glanced at the candles and the wine. "I'm not hungry," he muttered. "I made your favorite," I said. "It's been cooking all day, Mark." "I grabbed a burger with Sam," he lied. I knew it was a lie because he didn't smell like grease or onions. He smelled like cheap, cloying perfume. And underneath that floral scent, the sharp sting of gin. "You smell like a bar," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. He spun around, eyes flashing with sudden rage. "Here we go. The interrogation. Can't a guy have a drink without the third degree? You are suffocating me, Sarah. You're like a prison warden. I'm your wife, I said, fighting back tears. I cooked. I just wanted to connect. That's not connection, he snapped, gesturing at the food like it was trash. That's pressure. You do nice things just to hold them over my head later. Like some saint, making dinner while I'm supposedly out living. I see through your games. My heart was pounding. Games? Mark, I just wanted a meal together. You want control, he sneered. You run the office, you run this house. You want to control what I eat and when. I'm not hungry. Throw it out for all I care. He stormed toward the stairs. As he brushed past, that scent hit me again. Lilac and musk. Cheap, but unmistakable. Who are you with? I called out. He stopped on the second step without turning. People who actually appreciate me. People who don't treat me like a total disappointment. I don't treat you like that, I whispered, but the bedroom door slammed shut, shaking the floor. I stood in the silent kitchen. The candles flickered, casting weird shadows. I felt small, invisible. This is gaslighting, I realized. Back then, I just thought I was losing my mind. He made kindness feel like a weapon. He made asking for respect feel like I was acting like a dictator. He warped my reality until I didn't know what was true. I blew out the candles. I didn't store the food. I took the entire pot roast, heavy in my hands, and dumped it all into the trash. Hours of effort, gone in seconds. I wasn't cooking for a husband anymore. I was cooking for a ghost. The man upstairs, smelling of cheap perfume and gin, wasn't the man I vowed to love. I slept in the guest room. He never checked on me. The next day, I felt like I was drowning. I needed a lifeline. I called Chloe. We'd been friends since our kids were in preschool. We bonded over school drop-offs and complaining about the commute. She was always the wild, fun one. Chloe had been divorced 5 years from a guy named Ben, a sweet insurance agent. She used to say Ben was boring, but I think she just meant he was broke. We met at a bistro near my office. I looked like a mess, but Chloe looked perfect. New silk top, fresh blowout, glowing. "Oh, sweetie," she cooed, grabbing my hand. Her nails were a bright, aggressive red. "You look drained. Is it the firm? Is the lake house renovation stalling again?" "It's Mark," I said, my voice breaking. I ordered a black coffee, needing the caffeine to survive. He's acting like a different person. Angry. He missed our anniversary. Last night he blew up at me over dinner. He says I'm controlling. Chloe sighed, shaking her head. "Oh, Sarah." Men. They go through these weird phases at his age. It's the midlife crisis without the fancy car because, well, you know, because he can't afford one, I finished. "Exactly," Chloe said, sipping her Chardonnay. "It was only 11 in the morning. Look, I love you, so I'm going to be honest." "You're a lot to handle." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're a powerhouse," she said with a quick, tight smile. "That's why we're friends. But for a guy like Mark feeling emasculated, it's rough. You run the company, you pay the bills. He feels like a guest in his own life. Maybe you are suffocating him." It felt like a slap. My best friend was taking his side. "So, what do I do?" I asked. "Stop working? Go broke?" "No, silly," Chloe laughed. "Just loosen the reins. Stop asking where he is. Stop tracking his spending. Let him have secrets. Let him feel like a man. If he's out late, let him be. If he spends money, let him. You're rich, Sarah. I'm comfortable because I work 80 hours a week," I corrected her. "Exactly," Chloe beamed. "So, let him enjoy your success. It might save your marriage. Stop being the boss. Be the fun wife." She leaned back, swirling her drink. A scent drifted across the table. Lilac and musk. I froze. It was faint, mixed with coffee and garlic fries. But it was there. The exact same smell that was on Mark's jacket. "That perfume," I said, heart racing. "It's lovely. Is it new?" Chloe's smile didn't waver, but her eyes darted away for a second. "Oh, this? Yeah, just something cheap I grabbed at the mall. It suits you," I said, my brain spinning. "Thanks." She checked her watch. "Oops, gotta run. Real estate showing." She stood up, tossed a 20 on the table, and hugged me. "Listen, Sarah, back off. Let Mark breathe. Stop checking the bank accounts. Trust me." I watched her walk away. A bounce in her step. "Stop checking the accounts." That was her advice. The woman I trusted told me to ignore my husband's absence and his spending, and she smelled exactly like the friends Mark was supposedly with. I sat there as my coffee went cold. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was walking into a trap. And my best friend wasn't holding a lifeline, she was helping dig the pit. Trust you? I whispered to the empty chair. Not a chance. Instead of going back to work, I drove straight to my accountant. If Chloe wanted me to stop looking at the numbers, it was a massive red flag. My accountant, Dave, is a solid guy. He wears suspenders and gets genuinely pumped about tax loopholes. When I stormed into his office unannounced, he turned pale. Sarah? He stood up, knocking papers everywhere. Is everything okay? The tax office? I don't know, Dave. You tell me, I said, sitting down. I want to see the personal accounts, the joint checking, the savings, and the card I gave Mark 3 years ago. Dave hesitated, adjusting his glasses. Sarah, you know I usually email those. Mark said he was handling the reviews with you at home. Mark said that, did he? My voice was cold, but my blood was boiling. He lied. Pull them up, now. Dave typed, then turned the monitor toward me. It was a disaster. I know my balance sheets. I know what cash flow looks like. This wasn't a business, it was a hemorrhage. Start explaining, I said, pointing at a long list of transactions. Well, Dave stuttered, sweating. These are cash withdrawals. ATM limits were hit almost daily for 2 months. 500 here, 300 there. It adds up to $12,000 in cash. 12 grand? Mark didn't gamble. Where was it going? And the credit card? I asked. Steve clicked another tab. Things just got darker. Charges for a fancy downtown steakhouse, $300 a pop. I hadn't eaten there all year, yet Gary was living it up. Then hotel charges. The Regency. The Hilton. Why hotels in our own zip code? Steve whispered that Gary marked them as business networking. I snapped. Gary didn't even have a business. My stomach turned. A recurring charge for a legal group? And a retainer for a high-end firm? Steve looked confused, thinking we were updating our wills. I realized the truth in a heartbeat. It was a divorce lawyer. Gary was using our money to fund his exit strategy. He was eating steaks, sleeping around, and buying jewelry for a mistress, all while using my paycheck to hire the man who would take me down. I pointed to a pending charge, a $5,000 deposit for a luxury condo. He was moving out. Steve looked pale, stammering that Gary told him it was for a surprise investment. He manipulated us both. Gary was a failed salesman who had switched to selling lies. I told Steve to print every single receipt. I needed to see the full scope of this betrayal. I watched the printer churn out my life in receipts. I needed a trust account for my niece. Today, move every liquid asset I could. Steve warned it would drain our joint account, but I didn't care. I needed to act before Gary caught on. I left that office with a stack of proof thick enough to break his neck. The numbers confirmed it. He was stealing, he was cheating, and he wasn't alone. The scent of lilac and musk came back to me. Linda, my best friend, my gut twisted this was a conspiracy between my husband and the woman I trusted most. I sat in my car, staring ahead. You want a war? You just declared one on the wrong person. The next few days were a blur of acting. I cooked, I chatted, and I watched him lie to my face while he scrolled through his phone. He kept talking about fake leads on a duplex. He was texting her, obviously. I started checking his truck's odometer. 50 miles a day enough to reach her apartment complex. Then a massive thunderstorm hit on Thursday. Gary came home soaked, claiming he had a flat tire on the highway. I checked his hands, perfectly clean. Not a single smudge of grease. You don't change a tire in a downpour without getting dirty. I handed him a towel, waited for the shower to turn on, and ran to his truck. The smell of that same perfume was thick in the cab. I shined my flashlight on the floor mat, muddy footprints, small ones. A woman's size 7 boot. I wear a 9. I check the gap between the seat and the console. Things always fall there. Secrets included. My fingers brushed something sharp. I pulled out a pearl drop earring with a custom gold setting. My breath hitched. I knew this earring because I had bought it for Linda's birthday last year. She swore she would never take them off. Well, she had certainly lost one in my husband's truck. I sat in that truck while the rain hammered the roof like gunfire. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. Gary and Linda. The 2 people I trusted were laughing at me while spending my money. I wanted to scream, but I remembered the lawyer's retainer. I couldn't blow my cover yet. I tucked the earring into my pocket, wiped the mud away, and walked back inside, dripping wet. Gary was at the bottom of the stairs, looking suspicious. I told him I was just checking the gutters. He rolled his eyes at my supposed obsession with home maintenance. I went to the kitchen to fix his tea, watching him smirk at his phone. "Drink up, Gary. You think you're winning, but I just found the evidence that is going to bury you." I didn't sleep a wink. I needed a shark, so I drove to that firm first thing. The exact firm Gary had paid a retainer to, but Gary was lazy. He had paid online but hadn't signed the conflict paperwork. I walked straight to the receptionist and told her I was the one who actually paid their fees. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from the lead attorney. He was sharp, with eyes like a hawk. I slid the bank statements across his desk. He confirmed Gary had paid, but since no official engagement letter existed, he wasn't technically his client yet. I smiled. I wanted to hire him before Gary could. If I signed with this firm, they were conflicted out of representing my husband. We spent an hour mapping out our strategy. Every dollar Gary spent on his mistress was marital property he'd have to pay back. We were going to claw back every steak dinner and every hotel bill from his share of the settlement. It was time to show him exactly what he was about to lose. I demanded he be kicked out, but the lawyer warned I needed cause. Gary was abusive and unstable, so I needed proof. He told me to record the outbursts. I knew the laws on audio recording were strict, but video in my own home was a different story. The trap was set. It was time to watch him walk right into it. Install cameras, record his outbursts. If he threatens you, we file for an emergency order of protection. The sheriff kicks him out immediately. "Done," I said. Also, Henderson leaned in. "You need a private investigator. You know about the affair, but you need proof. Irrefutable proof. Not just an earring, photos, dates, times. If we prove he is buying property with your money, we crush him in court." He slid a card across the desk. "Hank Miller." "Investigations. Hank is pricey," Henderson warned, "but he gets the shot." I left the office and called Hank. We met at a diner. Hank looked like a TV detective, worn leather jacket, tired eyes, black coffee. "Husband?" Hank asked before I sat down. "Husband and best friend," I corrected. Hank raised an eyebrow. "Ouch, the double header." "Give me the details." I gave him everything. Gary's plate, Linda's address, the times Gary vanished. "I need to know their plans," I said. "It is not just sex, they are spending big money." "I will put a tracker on his car," Hank said. "Legal if your name is on the title." "It is," I said. "I paid for the truck. Then we are good." "Give me 3 days. I will get you a portfolio." Driving home, a strange calm set in. For the first time in months, I was not afraid. I had a team, a lawyer who knew the law, a detective who could find anything, and the element of surprise. I stopped at an electronics store. I bought 3 nanny cams disguised as chargers and smoke detectors. I got home first. Set them up in the kitchen, living room and hall. Synced them to a hidden app. When Gary walked in later, yelling about the house being hot, I watched him from the laundry room. "Smile, Gary," I thought. "You are on candid camera." 3 days later, Hank called. "Meet me at the diner. You need to see this sitting down." My stomach knotted. Knowing is one thing, seeing it in glossy 8x10s is another. I slid into the booth. Hank did not waste time. He pushed a manila envelope across the sticky table. "It is worse than you thought," he said. I opened it. First photo. Standard affair stuff. Gary and Linda walking into a motel. Gary's hand on her back, Linda laughing. They looked happy. That hurt. They looked like a couple in love, not 2 people wrecking a family. "Keep going," Hank said. The next shots were from yesterday, not a motel, a luxury condo complex downtown, the Lakeside Towers. "They spent 2 hours there with a realtor," Hank explained. "I ran the realtor's plates. She is top tier. Sells places starting at $500,000. There was a photo of them on a balcony, Gary pointing, looking like a king. Linda leaning on his shoulder, and here is the kicker." Hank tapped the last photo. Zoomed in through a coffee shop window. They had papers spread out. "I have a long lens," Hank said. I got a shot of the document. I squinted at the grainy image. A financing application. Under assets. A list. Brenda's Reno and Design, 50% share. Marital home equity, $600,000. Joint retirement fund. He is listing your company as collateral, I whispered, my hand shaking. He thinks he owns half of it. He is counting his chickens, Hank agreed. But look at the co-borrower. I looked. Linda Miller, she is on the application. They are not just hooking up, Brenda. They are building a portfolio based on your divorce settlement before you even file. Can they do this? I asked. Not legally, Hank said. He is misrepresenting assets. He cannot pledge half your company until a judge awards it. This is fraud. Bank fraud if he signs it. I stared at the photos. The betrayal went deeper than sex. This was theft. Linda was not just stealing my husband, she was helping him carve up my life's work. They were planning a penthouse life paid for by my sweat and tears. There is one more thing, Hank said, hesitating. I have audio. I used a parabolic mic on the balcony. Play it, I said. Hank put an earbud in my ear. I heard the wind, then Gary's voice, clear as day. Don't worry, babe. The old hag is clueless. She is so desperate to keep me she is cooking roasts and buying tickets. I will string her along until the bonus check clears next month. Then I file. We take the cash, we take the payout, and she will be working until she is 80 to pay me alimony. Linda laughed. You are so smart. The old hag, I repeated, taking the earbud out. A cold calm settled over me. It replaced the hurt. It replaced the anger. It was pure distilled hate. You okay? Hank asked. Better than okay, I said, packing the photos away. I have everything I need. What is the play? Hank asked. He wants to wait for the bonus? I stood up. He wants to treat me like a fool? Fine. Let him think he is winning. I am going to let him walk right off the cliff he built. I paid Hank and drove home, visualizing Gary's greedy face. You want a performance, Gary? I thought. I will give you the performance of a lifetime. I walked inside. Gary was on the couch. Hey, he grunted. Hey, honey, I said, forcing a smile. I was thinking, maybe you are right. I have been too controlling with the money. Maybe we should talk about giving you more access for investments. Gary sat up, eyes lighting up with greed. Really? Really? I lied. Let us talk over dinner. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for him to step in it. The hardest part of war is the waiting. For 2 weeks, I became an Academy Award winner. My stage was the kitchen. My audience was a cheating husband who thought he was a genius. After hearing them plot to live off my alimony, the hurt vanished. All that remained was cold, calculating precision. I looked at Gary and did not see the man I loved for 25 years. I saw a parasite, and you do not negotiate with parasites, you exterminate them. I started the softening campaign on a Tuesday with a bottle of expensive scotch, the kind Gary loved, but I usually refused to buy. What is this? Gary asked, eyeing the bottle. He was lounging on the sofa, texting. Probably Linda. A peace offering, I said, setting it down. I have been thinking about what you said, about feeling suffocated, about me controlling the purse strings. He sat up, putting the phone down. And I think you are right, I lied. The words tasted like ash, but I forced a smile. I have been so focused on the business, I forgot to let you lead. I know you have vision. His chest puffed out. It was pathetic how easy he was to manipulate. Well, I have been saying that for years, Brenda. I have potential deals in the pipeline. Real estate is bouncing back. Exactly, I said. And you need capital. You cannot ask me for permission every time you take a client to dinner or put down a deposit. I reached into my bag and pulled out a sleek, black envelope. I spoke to the bank. I authorized a secondary card on my business line of credit, $50,000 limit. It is for investment opportunities. I handed it to him. Gary looked at the card like it was gold. His hands shook. He was seeing weekends with Linda. He was seeing the freedom to leave me. Brenda, this is a big step, he said, trying to sound solemn while a smirk twitched on his face. I appreciate you finally trusting me. I do trust you, I said. I trust you to hang yourself with the rope I just handed you. But Gary, there is one catch. It is a new account, so fraud protection is high. If you make a big purchase, just give me a heads up so I can clear it on the app. Otherwise, it might decline. Sure, he waved his hand. Sure, business, I agreed. That night I heard him calling from the garage. I checked my hidden camera feed. Gary whispered, Babe, you won't believe it. The old lady just handed me a $50,000 credit line. She basically paid me to leave. We can put the deposit on the Skyview condo next week. She is clueless. It is too easy. I watched him pace, drunk on his own ego. He thought he was the predator. He had no idea that credit card was just bait. He had already swallowed the hook. I played along for 10 more days. I cooked his favorite meals, stopped questioning his late nights. When he smelled like cheap perfume, I said nothing. I just asked if he closed the deal. Almost, he would wink. Every time he gave me that smug look. I added another 0 to his divorce settlement. It was draining. Acting like a doormat while plotting to slam the door takes a toll. But I had my sessions with Marcus, my lawyer, to stay grounded. We were building a fortress. Every text to his mistress, every dollar charged to that card, every lie, it all went into the file labeled asset dissipation. Gary thought he was launching a surprise attack. He was actually marching into an ambush. Just a few more days, I told my reflection. Hold it together, Sarah. The ending will be perfect. While Gary window shopped for his new love nest, I executed a financial move that would stun a hedge fund manager. Divorce is about liquidity. Cash is king. Gary had access to our $80,000 joint account, our emergency fund. If he filed first, a judge would freeze it. Or worse, he would drain it, claiming living expenses, and I would spend years fighting to get it back. I refused to let that happen. I met with my accountant Tom and Marcus early Monday. The trust, I asked, is it ready? The Sarah Vance Family Trust is active. Marcus nodded. It is an irrevocable trust for your niece's education. Perfectly legal estate planning. You are the trustee. Good, I said. Move $75,000 from the joint account into the trust. Today, Tom looked nervous. Sarah, that leaves $5,000. Gary will notice. That is the plan, I said. I want that money gone. If he asks, I will say it is in a high-yield bond for taxes. He doesn't know finance. He will buy it. And the credit card? Marcus asked. The $50,000 limit? I smiled. That is the best part. It is a sub-account on my company line. I have full control. I can kill the card from my phone instantly. You gave him a card that works until you say otherwise? Marcus chuckled. Brutal. Necessary, I corrected. He plans to use that card for the condo deposit this Friday. I saw the invite on his tablet. Friday, Marcus mused. 3 days away. I need that protection order ready for Friday morning, I said. I have the footage of him throwing a chair last week and threatening to burn the house down. Is it enough? Marcus reviewed the file, with the audio of him planning to defraud you, and the video of the threat? In this county? Yes. It is enough for an ex parte order. That means we go to the judge without Gary. He grants it, the sheriff serves him, and he has 10 minutes to pack before he is out. Perfect, I said. I left the office and checked my banking app. The transfer was complete. The account Gary thought was his personal slush fund for his new life was empty. The money was safe in the trust. When I got home, Gary was in a great mood, humming in the kitchen while making a sandwich. Hey, Hon, he said. Did you see the market? Up 50 points. I didn't notice, I said, setting my keys down. Gary, I moved some funds for tax reasons. The account balance looks low, but don't worry. It is invested. He paused, panic flickering in his eyes. Moved? Where? How much? Most of it, I said casually, opening the fridge. My accountant said we had to offset the business gains. It is locked up for 6 months. But you have that credit card, right? So we are fine for daily costs. Relief washed over him. He actually let out a breath. Oh, okay. Yeah, the card. That is fine. Smart move, babe. Investing is smart. He did not care about the cash because he thought he had the magic plastic. He thought that card was his golden ticket. He did not realize I had severed his main artery and handed him a tourniquet I could tighten whenever I wanted. By the way, he said, eating, the guys have a thing Friday afternoon. Celebrating Mike's birthday. I might be late. Friday, I repeated. Sure, have fun. I knew it was not Mike's birthday. Friday was the condo closing. He planned to sign, swipe my card, and serve me papers over the weekend. I will, he grinned. It is going to be a big day. Yes? I agreed, eyeing the knife block. It certainly is. He had no idea that while he planned a celebration, I was planning an eviction. 2 days before the end, we had one final public performance. Our neighbours, the Millers, host an annual summer kickoff barbecue. It is a classic. Burgers, cheap beer, and neighborhood gossip. Usually Gary skipped these, but this year he insisted we attend. We should show our faces, he said, adjusting his polo. Look like the happy couple. Keep up appearances, right? He wanted witnesses. He wanted people to see us acting normal so when he blindsided me, he could claim I just snapped. We arrived around 2. The party was loud, and standing by the cooler, holding a spritzer, was Chloe. Of course she was there. She lived 3 streets over. She wore a dress that was way too tight for a family event. Sarah, Gary, she waved, her voice grating. We walked over. Gary grabbed a beer and stood too close to her. Hey, Chloe, I said, putting on my sunglasses to hide my disgust. Great turnout, Gary said, projecting his voice. Man, it is good to relax. Sarah here has been working me to the bone, haven't you, honey? He draped a heavy arm around my shoulder. It felt like a chain. We all work hard, Gary, I said stiffly. Oh, come on, he laughed, jostling me. She is a slave driver. You know, Chloe, I keep telling her to retire. Look at her. She is stressed. The wrinkles are showing. The group nearby went quiet. It was a cruel, mean-spirited joke. Chloe giggled. Oh, stop, Gary. Sarah looks distinguished. Besides, at our age, we can't all be 25. She preened, smoothing her dress, implying she was the exception. Speak for yourself, Gary winked. I feel 25. I have a second wind coming. Big changes on the horizon. He raised his beer to new chapters and upgrading. The neighbors exchanged uncomfortable glances. They sensed it, the disrespect, the weird energy between Gary and Chloe. I stood there, feeling the sun and my own boiling rage. He was mocking me in front of everyone. He was basically toasting his affair to my face. I decided to test him. Upgrading? I asked, my voice cold. Are you buying a new car, Gary? With what money? The air went dead silent. Gary's smile faltered. His eyes narrowed. I have resources, Sarah. You do not know everything. I know enough, I said enigmatically. Chloe stepped in, sensing the shift. So, Sarah, I heard you are renovating the lake house kitchen. Granite or quartz? I haven't decided, I said, turning to her. I am thinking of tearing the whole thing down. Sometimes the foundation is rotten, Chloe. And when the foundation is rotten, you don't just change the countertops. You bulldoze the structure and clear the trash. I stared at her. Locked eyes. For a second the mask fell. Chloe looked terrified. She saw something in my face, not the pushover friend, but the businesswoman who fought labor unions. Well, she stammered, that sounds extreme. It is necessary, I said. Excuse me, I need a drink. This one tastes sour. I walked away, leaving them frozen. As I passed the crowd, I heard whispers. Why is he treating Sarah like that? He is drunk. She looks finished. I splashed cold water on my face in the bathroom. Gary was right, I looked exhausted. But not from age. From the dead weight I was carrying. 2 days, I told my reflection. Just 2 more. When I stepped out, Gary and Linda were huddled in the corner, whispering hard. They looked like partners whose heist had hit a snag. Good, let them sweat. We walked home in total silence. Gary crashed on the couch by 6. I slipped into his office, a room he barely touched, and checked his tablet. It was unlocked. I opened his email to find a realtor confirmation. Friday, 2 p.m. Lakeside Towers closing. Bring the deposit check or card for $45,000. Below that, a draft to a law firm. Subject, divorce. Body, serve her Monday. I want full custody of the dog just to spite her. He meant Buster, my golden retriever. The dog Gary kicked out for shedding. That did it. He could take the money, but threatening my dog? That was a declaration of total war. I deleted the draft so he stayed clueless. I packed a bag for Buster and hid it in my car. Don't worry, boy, I whispered, scratching his ears. Daddy is going on a long trip, and he is not coming back. Friday morning felt humid, the air heavy, like a storm that refused to break. I was up at 5. I lay there listening to Gary snore, memorizing the sound to savor the quiet later. I put on my best suit. My closing deal armor, navy blue, sharp lines, killer heels. Gary woke at 8, jittery and smelling of too much cologne. Big day at the site, he asked, eyeing my suit. Huge, I said. Lots of loose ends to cut. Me too, he grinned, a nervous twitch. Meeting the guys at the bar. Might be late. Don't forget your wallet, I said. Got it right here? He patted his pocket where the black credit card my trap was sitting. See you, Brenda? No kiss. He grabbed his keys and whistled as he walked to his truck. He thought he was walking toward freedom. Once he was gone, I pulled out my phone. Execute, I texted my lawyer, then I called the locksmith. You can come now, he is gone. Then I called the alarm company to reset my codes and remove his access. For 3 hours, my house was a hive of activity. Tony, the locksmith, drilled out the deadbolts. You okay, Brenda? He asked. Never better, Tony, I said. Use the reinforced ones. Inside, I was trashing his life. I grabbed heavy-duty contractor bags and swept his clothes, hangers and all, straight off the rack. His shoes, his magazines, his toiletries, everything went into the bags. I dragged 6 of them to the curb. It looked like trash day, but it was really a spiritual cleansing. At 11:30, my lawyer called. The judge signed the emergency protection order, he said. Threats of violence are on record. The sheriff is on standby. If he tries to enter, he gets arrested. Thank you, Arthur, I said. Also, he added, we filed for divorce. Serve him at the house, I said. I want him to see those new locks. At noon, my phone pinged. Transaction alert. $200 at a local pub. Approved. He was buying rounds. Liquid courage before the big signing. I let it go through. One last drink on me. At 1:45, I sat at my laptop and opened the banking portal. I hovered over the sub-account linked to the card in Gary's pocket. The button said, Suspend account. I waited. At 1:55, my phone rang. A video call. I took a breath. This was the moment I had rehearsed for weeks, I answered. The screen filled with the chaotic bar. Gary's red face, Linda's smirk, his friends laughing. I am finalizing the divorce, babe, he shouted. I listened to him brag about taking half my life. Then I spoke. Gary, I said, my voice steady. Before you celebrate and sign anything, what? He sneered. I have a question, I said. The bar noise seemed to fade. Oh, what is that? He mocked. Is Linda laughing? I asked. Because I see her right there. Hi, Linda. Linda froze. She was eyes wide. Guess she doesn't know, I said, my voice turning lethal, that you are about to put her condo down payment on my credit card. Gary blinked. It is my card now, Brenda. Actually, I said, my finger hovering over the mouse, I gave you a card linked to my business, and since I am the admin click, card suspended, reported stolen. I just cancelled it, I said, reported it stolen. If you try to swipe that for $45,000 in 10 minutes, that is a felony, credit card fraud. Gary S.'s face turned the colour of a corpse. You cannot, he stammered. I just did, I smiled. And Gary? Do not bother coming home. The locks are new. The police have an order of protection against you. Your clothes are on the curb. If you step on my driveway, you are going to jail. Happy anniversary, darling. The silence on the other end was absolute. For 5 seconds, Gary just stared. A piece of pretzel hung from his mouth. His arrogance vanished, replaced by pure panic. Linda grabbed his arms. What did she say? Why is the card cancelled? She shrieked. Gary, the closing is in 20 minutes. Gary looked at the phone, then at Linda like a rat in a burning maze. Brenda, you are joking, he croaked. That money was our investment. My investment, I corrected. And I decided to divest from bad assets, namely you. I will take everything, he shouted, trying to save face. I will tell the judge you cut me off. Go ahead, I said calmly. Tell him about the fraud. Tell him about the threats to burn my house down, which, by the way, I have on video and submitted to the court. Video? Gary whispered. Every room, Gary, I said. I heard you call me a hag. I heard you plotting to bleed me dry. Linda gasped and pulled away from him. She knew the game was over. She wasn't looking at a wealthy man anymore. She was looking at a broke, middle-aged guy with criminal charges. Gary, does the card work or not? Linda hissed. It has to, Gary stammered. He grabbed the waiter. Hey, let me tab out. He threw the card down with trembling hands. Run it, just for the drinks. I watched in high definition. The waiter took the card. The whole table went quiet. The waiter swiped, frowned, swiped again. Sir, it is declined, he said. The machine says pickup card. I have to keep this. No, Gary lunged. Give it back. It is a mistake. Sir, don't touch me, the waiter snapped. Do you have another payment? Gary looked at Linda. Babe, do you have your card? The look Linda gave him could have frozen hell. My card? She spat. You told me you were liquid. I am. Trust me, it is, Gary insisted. Brenda is just playing games. I cut in, voice ice cold. Brenda is finished with you, Gary. The divorce is happening. Linda grabbed her purse, fuming. I am done. Gary panicked, screaming about the condo and the deposit. Linda snapped back. There is no condo, you fool. You are flat broke. I am not going down with you. She stormed out. Gary looked at the phone, pleading, begging for love. I laughed. A real, sharp laugh. You do not love me. You love my bank account, and that account is now off limits. I hung up. Stay away, I warned. The police are waiting. The screen went dark, and the silence felt incredible. My heart hammered with pure adrenaline. I looked at my steady hands, no shaking. I did not need a private investigator to know what was coming. In this town, gossip travels faster than fiber optics. Our realtor, Sarah, is well connected. I got the full update later. Gary was desperate. After Linda left the bar, he chased her down, lying that it was just a technical glitch. He promised her hidden cash. Somehow, he dragged her to Lakeside Towers. Picture it, Gary, sweating, smelling of stale beer, while Linda stood there with smudged mascara, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. We are ready, Gary declared, slamming his hand on the desk. Forget the card issues. My ex is just bitter, but here are the numbers. He handed over the details for our joint account, the one I had emptied 3 days ago. Sarah ran the check. Mr. Miller, she said, peering over her glasses, this account has $4,000. The deposit requires $45,000. Try again, Gary yelled. There is 80 grand in there. There was... Sarah replied calmly, until Monday. The money is gone. Gary went pale. He finally realized I had not just cancelled a card. I had scorched the earth. Then the final blow hit. A notification pinged on Linda's phone. Everyone knew. Gary Miller is broke. His wife finally dumped him. Linda did not even scream. She just looked at him with pure disgust. You lied to me, Gary pleaded, but she cut him off. You are a loser, Gary. You always were. I am not ruining my life for a man who cannot even buy me a drink. She walked out of the office for good, leaving him there with nothing but a failed transaction and a massive hangover. Back home, the sun was setting. The air was tense, but I was ready. I knew he was coming back. I stood behind the curtains. My phone buzzed a security alert at the driveway. A taxi pulled up. No truck. Maybe he was too drunk to drive, or Linda took the keys.
He stumbled out.
Staring at the house. His house. My house. He saw the 6 black trash bags lined up for the curb like soldiers. He kicked one. A golf shoe tumbled out. He stared at the front door. He stormed up the steps, face red with rage. He shoved his key in the lock. Nothing. He jiggled it. He slammed his shoulder against the wood, but the new deadbolt held fast. Brenda, open the door, he screamed. I live here! I stayed silent. He grabbed a porch chair, raising it to smash the window. I tapped my screen. Police, I said clearly. My estranged husband is trying to break in. I have a protection order. He is violent. The dispatcher answered. Officers are already on the way. Neighbours are already calling in, she added. I looked out. The Johnsons were watching. Mrs. Higgins was peeking through her blinds. The whole street was witnessing the king of the castle having a breakdown. Gary threw the chair. It bounced off the brick. He collapsed, sobbing like a toddler who just heard the word no for the first time. Then blue lights flashed. I sipped my tea. Hot, just how I like it. 4 deputies stepped out. This was not a courtesy call. This was an arrest. Gary was still pounding on the door. Let me in! It is mine! An officer shouted. Step away from the door! Gary spun around, wild-eyed. She changed the locks. That is illegal. Are you Gary Miller? Yes, I am the victim. The deputy walked up, holding a paper. We have a protection order from the judge this morning. Vacate these premises immediately and stay 500 feet from Brenda Miller. That is a lie, Gary screamed, pointing at my window. She is crazy. Put your hands behind your back, the deputy ordered. For what? Disorderly conduct and breaking and entering. You're under arrest. The metal clicked. The most satisfying sound ever. They dragged him away as he shouted obscenities. He passed the trash bags. My Armani suits, he yelled. We will collect your things later, the officer said, shoving him into the cruiser. I stepped onto the porch as the car drove off. The evening was quiet again. The Johnsons waved. I waved back, not embarrassed, liberated. I checked the bags on the curb. I wanted him to have exactly what belonged to him, nothing more. My phone rang. Henderson. Did it go through? He asked. He is in the cruiser, I replied. Good, he said. That seals the violation. I will have his lawyer pick up his belongings from storage. Do not keep them on the curb. It looks bad for the court, he warned. I will move them tomorrow, I said. Henderson paused. You did good, Brenda. Most fold. I folded for 25 years, Arthur, I told him. I am done folding. That night the house felt clean. No smell of beer or resentment, just lemon polish and peace. I slept in the king bed. Buster, my dog, curled up at my feet. Gary always hated that. Your bed now, buddy, I whispered. The fallout began the next morning. Gary called from jail. I did not pick up. He left a voicemail. Brenda, please, I am sorry. Bail me out. Linda is gone. Mom is in Florida. I love you. I saved the message not to listen, but as evidence. Evidence of his cycle. Abuse, discard, regret, hover. A perfect toxic pattern. And I was done with the book. I called the storage company. I prepaid 1 month. After that they could auction it. I hired kids to haul the bags away and texted the code to Gary. Unit 4B. Code 1234. Good luck. Then I blocked him. The legal battle that followed was just a systematic dismantling. Gary tried for a fancy lawyer, but lawyers need money, and Gary had none. His cards were gone, the accounts empty. Linda was long gone. He ended up with a court-appointed mediator. We met 3 weeks later. Gary looked terrible, wrinkled suit, gaunt face. He could not even look me in the eye. Henderson laid it all out. The claim for wasted assets was our winning hand. My attorney, Henderson, told the mediator, Mr. Miller spent $40,000 of our savings on his mistress, Sarah Jenkins, over 6 months. We had receipts for luxury hotels, jewelry, fine dining, and vacations. Illinois law mandates that money be returned to the estate before any split. The mediator scanned the pile of proof, then turned to Gary. Is this true? Gary stammered, claiming we were mentally separated. The mediator snapped. The marriage ends when a judge says it does. You owe the estate $40,000. Next came the business valuation. Gary demanded half of my firm, Apex Design. I helped build that, Gary argued. I gave her advice. Henderson cut him off. We have tax returns showing zero financial input from you. We have sworn statements from my staff saying you never worked a day. And we have recordings of you plotting to ruin the company. No judge will hand you shares in a business you tried to sabotage. Gary collapsed in his chair, watching his imaginary payout vanish. The final settlement was brutal for him. I kept the house. I kept 100% of my company. I kept my retirement and the trust. Gary got his truck, which I paid off just to be rid of the loan, his clothes, and a $20,000 cash payout. That was his share of the home equity minus the $40,000 he blew on Sarah and the legal bills he caused. $20,000. That was his total after 25 years. It would barely cover a year of rent. That is not fair. Gary cried. Fair? I looked up. Fair would be paying for the years I spent supporting a man who resented my success. This is not fair, Gary. This is mercy. Sign. His hand shook as he signed. Leaving the courthouse, Gary tried to corner me one last time. Brenda, what do I do now? Where do I go? You are a man of vision, Gary, I said, throwing his own words back at him. I am sure you have big ideas waiting. I put on my shades and walked to my car without looking back. You might wonder about the lovebirds. Karma is real. It is a boomerang, and when you throw it hard enough, it comes back fast. Sarah did not just lose Gary, she lost her social status. Reputation is everything in these suburbs. Once the truth came out, and I made sure the right version spread that Sarah tried to scam a friend, and ended up with a broke, homeless lover, the doors slammed shut. She was kicked out of her book club, uninvited from every gala. Even the local realtors stopped talking to her. She became radioactive. She texted me 2 months later, begging for coffee and claiming Gary manipulated her too. I didn't block her right away. I just replied with one photo. A pile of trash bags on the curb. This is where garbage belongs, Sarah. Never contact me again. Then I blocked her. I heard she moved to a small town in Wisconsin to live with her sister. Good riddance. As for Gary, he burned through his $20,000 in 3 months. He tried to start a consulting firm, but it failed because he lacks actual skills. He could not pay his rent. He ended up exactly where he belonged, his mother's basement. His mother, who always said I wasn't domestic enough, was now stuck supporting a 55-year-old man who played games and complained about life. I saw him 6 months later at the grocery store. He looked ragged in a stained shirt, buying frozen pizza and cheap beer. He was fighting the cashier over an expired coupon. I could have gloated, I could have said something, but I didn't. I just moved to a different line. He was not worth the effort. A total stranger. 1 year since the divorce, my home feels different. I removed the kitchen wall, the renovation I was planning the day he called me. It is open, airy, and bright. I painted the room soft sage, bought new sheets, and got a new car. My business had its best year ever. Without Gary dragging me down, my creativity soared. We just landed a contract to redesign the city library, but the biggest shift is internal. I used to fear being alone. I dreaded the empty chair at dinner. Now that chair represents peace. A life where no one lies to me, steals from me, or makes me feel small. I joined a hiking club and started pottery classes on Thursdays. My hands are finally covered in clay instead of receipts. Last week I met a man hiking. His name is Robert, a retired architect. He asked me for coffee, saying he wasn't looking for a banker or a nurse, just good conversation. We split the bill. It was the most romantic thing I have felt in decades. I do not know where it goes, and I do not care, because for the first time I am whole on my own. I am in my garden now, writing this. My dog is chasing butterflies near the hydrangeas. The sun is setting over the life I reclaimed. If you feel that knot in your stomach or walk on eggshells, trust your gut. Check the numbers and never be afraid to change the locks. You are the architect of your own life. Do not let anyone else hold the pen. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed seeing justice, please share this with a friend. Stay strong and remember, the best revenge is a life lived well. Looking at Brenda's journey, we see more than victory over betrayal. We see a powerful awakening of self-worth. Her story reminds us that kindness should never be mistaken for weakness, and silence is often the sharpest strategy for someone taking their power back. True dignity is not about never falling. It is about the courage to stand up, dust yourself off, and demand the respect you deserve. We teach people how to treat us by what we allow. Let this be a testament that you are the architect of your own happiness, and it is never too late to clear out the toxicity to build a future that honors who you are. If you found this lesson on resilience valuable, please share your thoughts or comment good below. We appreciate your engagement and look forward to the next story.